Good morning. I'm Mary Utes, and I'd like to welcome you to Bucksmont Unitarian Universalist Fellowship's multi-platform worship. Where moved by love, we share lifelong journeys of growth, wonder, and healing, nurturing wholeness in society and spirit, creating a community of justice and compassion. I'd like to give a welcome to everyone joining us online and in person today, members, friends, and those who may be newcomers to our community this morning. If you are new to Bucksmont and visiting us in person today, please stop by our visitor center in the front hallway near where you came in. There you can also make a name tag for yourself and find more information about Unitarian Universalism, Bucksmont Fellowship, and upcoming events. If you'd like a hymnal or a printed order of service, those are available near the entrance to the sanctuary. If you are visiting us online or prefer digital methods, please email our office administrator, Beverly, to sign up for our email newsletter and to get connected to our congregation. Each week in our service, we offer time for people to share a joy or sorrow from their lives by texting a phone number. That number will be shared in the chat box for those online and on screen for everyone now and later in the service. If you would like to see the order of service, details about upcoming services, and other ways to gather with our community, you can find that on the homepage of our website, www.bucksmontuu.org. There is a lot happening at Bucksmont, and we'd like to highlight these announcements in particular. Religious education this week from 10:30 to 11:45. Pre-K and elementary RE will be meeting downstairs this week after time for all ages. Nursery care is available for families with little ones 3 and under. They are invited to drop off or stay and play in the nursery as needed, and they may use the play spaces in the sanctuary and social hall as well. After the service today, there will be a discussion at 12 noon in the sanctuary about the civil rights issues that resulted from the inequities in the aftermath of our various wars. Our annual picnic will be held on Sunday, June 11th, from 11:45 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Susie Hook Celebration Garden. There will be live music, great food, and lots of fun. We would love to see you there. Whether you are a guest, friend, or member, we are glad you are part of our worship service today.
We've been tenting tonight on the old campground, thinking of days gone by, of the loved ones at home that gave us the hand, the tear that says goodbye. Many are the hearts that are weary tonight, wishing for the war to cease. Many are the hearts that are looking for the right to see the dawn of peace. Tenting tonight, tenting tonight, tenting on the old campground. We are tired of war on the old campground. Many are dead and gone. Of the brave and true who've left their homes, others been wounded long. Many are the hearts that are weary tonight, wishing for the war to cease. Many are the hearts that are looking for the right to see the dawn of peace. Tenting tonight, tenting tonight, tenting on the old campground.
As we gather in our sanctuary, in our homes, or watch from mobile screens almost anywhere, we are all together. Those watching now on Sunday, and those who may be watching months from now, we are joined together for worship across both space and time. This is a free, creedless, religious congregation. In the discipline of truth and the spirit of universal kinship, we join together in a cooperative quest for religious and ethical values, seeking to apply these values to the development of character, enrichment of the spirit, and service to all. You are welcome here, whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever the color of your skin or your country of origin, no matter your gender expression or gender identity, whatever your age, however you define family, wherever you are at this time, and whatever the source of your faith, you are welcome here.
This morning, as we do each time we gather together, we kindle our Unitarian Universalist chalice. We do so today with words from Don Cooley. We light our chalice this morning, grateful for the love that we experience in this beloved community. May the flame light the way for all who seek abundance. Please light your chalice at home. Our common chalice is now lit.
Our opening song today started as an African-American spiritual, talking about what's going to happen when you get to heaven. If I've been fighting, I can lay down my sword and shield. The song has morphed into a peace song, and the last verse in our hymnal reflects that, shake hands around the world. But I think both meetings are appropriate for today. Please rise as you're willing and able, and join in hymn 162. I'm going to lay down my sword and shield. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Down by the riverside, gonna lay down my sword and shield. Down by the riverside and study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside. Gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. 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 Gonna shake hands around the world. Everywhere I roam. Everywhere I roam. Everywhere I roam. Gonna shake hands around the world. Everywhere I roam and study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more.
Please come up and join me for a time for all ages. For anyone who wants to come up, it's fine. We're learning about Memorial Day, so this is what we're celebrating this weekend, and this is a book all about what that means. All right. Hello, Memorial Day. Memorial Day is a time for remembering. It honors U.S. soldiers who fought and died for our country's freedom. Memorial Day is on the last Monday of May. It is a national holiday. Government offices and schools are closed on that day. Oops. Oh, we'll worry about that later. On Memorial Day, U.S. flags fly at half-staff, so you might see that tomorrow. The flag is halfway down. Lowering them shows respect. People also put flowers and flags on soldiers' graves. Americans first celebrated Memorial Day in the 1800s. They called it Decoration Day. It honored soldiers who had died in the Civil War. That was a long time ago, over 100 years ago. The name changed to Memorial Day in 1882. The holiday soon became a day to honor U.S. soldiers from all wars. Memorial Day is a sad day, but it's also a happy day. Americans celebrate freedom and give thanks for living in a free country. It's Memorial Day. How will you celebrate? Spend time with your family and friends, have a picnic, play sports, or go to the beach. Honor soldiers by flying a U.S. flag. Write letters to soldiers serving today. Thank them by sharing a picture you drew. Many cities have parades on Memorial Day. Listen to marching bands. Remember the soldiers who fought to keep us free. That's it. Thank you very much.
As you go on your way, may you be filled with gladness. Go enjoy, go enjoy. May fortune bless your day with peace and loving kindness. Go in love, go in love. As you go on your way, may you be filled with gladness. Go enjoy, go enjoy. May fortune bless your day with peace and loving kindness. Go in love, go in love.
The offering in liberal religion is a vital part of our history of faith. As a covenanted community, people who freely choose to be here, our voluntary giving is symbolic of that freedom of choice. Each week at Bucksmont, we share our offering with a different cause or organization in the community. For the month of May, we are sharing with Cradles to Crayons, which provides children living in homeless or low-income situations with the essential items they need to thrive at home, at school, and at play. We ask that you participate in our morning offering in one of these ways. You can write out a check to Bucksmont and mail it into the fellowship. You may donate online now or at the end of our worship service, or you may place your donation into one of the baskets as they are passed. We will now receive the morning offering.
Hard times coming home now. Can't keep your feet on the ground. Thoughts and issues and no one wants you around. You're barely sleeping and you can't get through to the VA on the phone. No one is hiring and no one wants to give you a loan. And everyone else is carrying on just like they've always done before. You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still fighting the war. Flashback to Fallujah, lost another best friend. 3 tours of duty, and you're wondering when it's all gonna end. Body's broken, bones shattered, blood and dust in your mouth. Getting weary, but you're running with the few and the proud. Sometimes you wonder why you went. You never wondered what you stand up for. You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still fighting the war. Men go home to war for 100 reasons, but they all come home with the same demons. Some you can keep away for a while, some will pin you to the floor. You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still fighting the war. The bedspread is fraying, faded and tearing apart. 2 strangers holding each other in the dark. Tell me, what were you dreaming? Did you think it would end? How many heroes are scattered into the wind? And all the happily ever afters turn to broken dishes and priming doors. You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still facing the war. You've been home for a couple of years now, buddy, but you're still fighting the war. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Our community continues to grow and thrive due to generous donations of both time and money. For the many ways that you contribute and how it sustains this fellowship, we are truly grateful. This morning's reading is No Greater Love from War Zone Faith, an Army Chaplain's Reflection from Afghanistan by George Tiger. In the Gospel of John, it is written, "No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." I thought a lot about that as I tried to make sense of the deaths of two more friends. We must all make sense of such things. Death, whether in combat or in the normal course of life, will touch us all. When it does, we must try to figure out where it all fits in our living. I do not personally believe in a deity that has a cosmic purpose. I believe that finding meaning and discovering purpose in the stuff of living is the purview of living, breathing human beings. Even if you believe that God has a purpose for everything, or that you and I make meaning out of the triumph and tragedy of life, your belief is a choice you make. We in the military have dedicated our lives to many high ideals. Freedom, honor, loyalty, and duty define the American way of life. We place ourselves in harm's way to defend these ideals so that those at home can sleep safe each night. When we lose friends, an emptiness remains, which even the highest ideals can't fill. The cost of these ideals is the struggle to find meaning in these losses. As I wander around camp this week, these things weigh heavy on my heart. I sit and talk late into the night with friends and soon-to-be friends. I simply do not want to be alone. I find those who, unknown to them, just by being here, offer the healing and hope I so need. How do they do this? I wish I had an answer. I still have the vision of death in my mind and the smell of blood in my nose. I share a cigar with a young private who tells me about deer hunting in West Virginia. Another tells me about his four-wheeler. There is no magic in their words. They don't even know what I am going through. It is just their presence that matters. Out of this wandering, meaning begins to emerge. Out of this wandering, the emptiness begins to be filled. Through the power of friendship, we are given a great gift. Beyond the lofty ideals, beneath the noble causes, when all else is stripped away, we are here for each other. When things become difficult, even tragic, we need to know there are friends we can turn to and rely on. A place of emptiness will always remain for friends I have lost. Yet through and because of this emptiness, I find I have more friends than I realized. More people care than I have imagined. Allow me to be so bold as to change the words of John. No one has greater love than this, to be there for one's friends when they need him most. Just being there is sometimes the greatest love in the most difficult times.
Let us now enter into a time of awareness within ourselves, connection beyond boundaries, connections to one another, to the independent web of life, of which we are all but one small thread. As we breathe in, we are connected. As we breathe out, we are connected. Spirit of life, as we enter into this season of Memorial Day, surrounded by such a cloud of witnesses, we remember first of all the women and men who are currently serving in the armed forces, and we pray for their safe return. We also acknowledge that there are women and men who will not return, as we grieve their passing in the daily paper. Let us pause to honor their service and their sacrifice. As we pause this hour to give thanks for all the women and men who have served in the nation's armed services, those who have not served cannot fully imagine the experience of war. But we do know war's aftermath and the toll that it takes on the human heart. This day remembers and acknowledges loss, and do we remember those whom we have loved and lost? We hold their names and their faces in our mind's eye. We recall the gifts they gave to us through the strength of their being and the depth of their love and courage, of their dying and the fullness of their living. At this time, we could please say aloud or silently the names of those you want to remember today.
Johnny Cole.
L. Weiss.
Charles Grigg. Louis Duran. Betty Sinclair and James Sinclair.
In the holy quiet of this hour, their names surround us, and they live with us in blessed memory. May we remain together in silence as a tribute to all they have meant to us. As we breathe in, we are connected. As we breathe out, we are connected. May our minds create a vision of the world radical enough to be called holy. May our actions contain the promise of hope and the commitment to justice. May our hearts remember that love is a power that resists all forms of fear. By our thoughts, by our actions, by our hearts, and by our very breath, may this be so. Amen, and blessed be.
I invite you to remain seated in a spirit of meditation as we sing Spirit of Life. I'll play it once through. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stories of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
It seems I get to speak on the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend most years. I usually try and tell stories that show the inspirational acts of soldiers. This year, Lori asked me, I decided to look into the military history of African Americans. I ran into a problem. There were enough inspiring stories, but there were more disheartening stories of discrimination. There were also stories about what happened to the returning African American veterans. The inspiring story is probably the most inspiring one that I've seen lately. I don't know if you've watched Amsterdam yet. It's a movie that's out. And they have a little section where they're talking about the 369th Regiment. And they were known as the Harlem Hellfighters. They were originally a unit in New York. And when they got to France, the American soldiers did not want them to wear American uniforms. So they ended up having to put on French cloaks. And not only that, they were assigned to the French military. So these folks ended up in the front lines for 6 months. And if you know anything about World War I, being on the front lines for 6 months was hell. Of their soldiers, 171 members were awarded the Legion of Merit. When we get to the Second World War, Doris Miller, a Navy mess attendant who had voluntarily manned an anti-aircraft gun during the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, was awarded the Navy Cross. Didn't know how to use it. At least he hadn't been trained on it. I guess with an anti-aircraft gun, all you have to do is point it and pull the trigger. I don't know. One of the other stories that I found inspiring was the story of Specialist Lawrence Joel. He was a medic in 1965 and saved the lives of U.S. troops under ambush in Vietnam. He defied direct orders to stay on the ground, walking through Viet Cong gunfire, tending to the troops despite being shot twice himself. He was the first living African American to receive the Medal of Honor since the Mexican-American War. That's just a sample. From every war that we've been in, African Americans have served with heroism. But then some of the stories that I found really disheartening. One of them comes from the Philippine-American War. All of you that know what the Philippine-American War was, have you ever heard of it? Well, after the Spanish-American War peace treaty, the Philippines were ceded to the United States. Well, unfortunately, there was an insurgency in the Philippines that had been fighting against the Spanish. So when the Americans showed up, it was just another colonial power, and they continued to be an insurgency. One of the members of the African troops that were the African-American troops that were sent to keep the peace in the Philippines, one of them was named David Fagan. And he defected to the Philippine Army. He became a guerrilla fighter. And not only that, everybody wanted his capture. They were looking to capture this guerrilla fighter. The papers wanted to fight to capture him. The Army wanted to capture him. Nobody really knows what happened to him. The best story is that he got married to a Filipino lady and lived in the jungles after that. In World War I, over 200,000 African Americans served, but were forced to serve in segregated units. And these units basically didn't have much training. They were paid less and performed menial duties. One might actually call these people slaves because they did all of that kind of stuff that slaves would do. During the Second World War, there was this thing called the Chicago disaster on July 17th, 1944. An explosion of about 2,000 tons of ammunition that was being loaded onto ships by black Navy sailors under pressure from their white officers to hurry, caused the explosion in Northern California, killing 320 military and civilian workers, most of them black. It led to what later became the Port Chicago Mutiny. It's the only case of a full mutiny trial for mutiny in the history of the United States Navy. 50 African American sailors who had refused to continue loading ammunition under the same dangerous conditions. The trial was observed by a young lawyer, Thurgood Marshall. What happened when these folks returned? In general, returning African Americans faced heavy persecution when they returned home from World War I. And many African American veterans were lynched after returning from World War I. The prediction of equality had not been realized. Racial animosity was expanded by claims that any talk of black valor and positive contributions were lies meant to cover up cowardice and incompetence, which was counteracted by claims of prejudice and harmful white leadership, and the use of blacks as cannon fodder for white troops that followed them into battle. I'm hoping the Harlem Hellfighters went back to New York and not to the South. One of the things that also happened when they came back is they started getting involved in the civil rights movement after World War I. Did you know there was a civil rights movement after World War I? A lot of the organizations were formed then. One of the other things that happened is there's this thing called a blue discharge, something I'd never heard of either. It turns out that I always thought you either got an honorable discharge or a dishonorable discharge. Well, they created this thing called a blue discharge. in 1916. The blue discharge, sometimes called the blue ticket, was a form of administration things that says, well, we're letting you out, but you're neither good nor bad. Unfortunately, what happened is, because of this, many of the people that had a blue discharge were discriminated against by the VA, couldn't get their VA benefits because they weren't there. By 1941, there were 1,806 issued to African Americans. That accounted to 22% of all of the blue discharges, when African Americans made up 6.5% of the Army. Those folks were routinely denied benefits of the GI Bill and by the Veterans Administration. The GI Bill was signed on June 22nd, 1944, but it was administered by the individual states instead of the federal government, so they could be sure Jim Crow laws were not threatened. The VA itself encouraged black veterans to apply for vocational training instead of university admission, and arbitrarily denied educational benefits to some students. The original GI Bill ended in July 1956. By that time, nearly 8 million World War II veterans had received education or training, and 4.3 million home loans worth $33 billion were handed out, but most black veterans were left behind. We talk about the lack of family wealth that can be passed on. This is one of the things that happened. Couldn't buy homes when all of our, at least my parents' generation, were able to get the VA loans, were able to actually increase their wealth. The census in 2019 said that the average income for white Americans was $76,000. According to the census, black households, it was $46,000. When we see these kinds of things, we wonder if maybe reparations forget slavery, forget everything else, just forget about the reparations for what happened to the returning veterans. One of the things that I wanted to talk about at noon, I know I've said something about reparations, and some people have said, whoa, wait a minute, who's going to pay? Who's going to do this? You know, I didn't have anything to do with that. Well, today, I'm just going to try and start the conversation. And what I'm going to try and do, anybody that wants to be involved can give me their email address. And the idea is that we're going to have a course, probably in September, where we're going to be looking at the case for reparations by Coates. I can never say his first name, but it was an article in the Atlantic. And I have the article, and I'll email it to you before the course, and we'll sit down and we'll look at it. We'll say, well, this makes sense. What kind of reparation should we do? Can we have at least some way of allowing people access to the money to buy houses? A lot of the problems came with the redlining. What happened is that literally somebody took out a red pen and went on the map and outlined certain sections. And those were the African American sections. So if somebody wanted to buy a house in there, they couldn't. They couldn't get the loan. They couldn't get a loan to update, to maintain that house. I won't go into much more detail about that, but it was not a good situation, to say the least. So even if you don't stay today, I will let you know. We'll probably have a little thing in the Liberal Voice or e-Voice, which most of us in the Adult Education Committee has decided nobody reads or looks at, but we'll just trust you on that. All right, good, somebody does. And we'll decide, what day could we do this? Maybe once a month we could have a meeting talking about reparations so that we have the facts, so we can talk to our friends, even members of Bucksmont. Reparations? Really? Now, we're not going to be able to actually create a program for reparations. All we're trying to do is spread the word to make people understand why it's so important that we do something. Race is still that thing that we've never dealt with in this country. And unless we deal with it, unless we actually do something, individually as well as collectively, we're going to have problems in this country. We're going to continue to have the same things happening. We're going to see discrimination around. One of the stories that I love about the Second World War is my uncle, Ray Gardner, was a sergeant in the Army. He was in Papua New Guinea fighting, and they decided that they were going to have a lottery to see who gets to go home. He won the lottery, he got to go home. He went to Georgia. He gets to Georgia, and the commanding officer says, well, you can be a mechanic. He says, I'm not a mechanic. He says, well, the other job I got is for you to train these, N-word, to drive truck. And so that's what he did. He went to train black soldiers how to drive truck in the Second World War. He never told me for sure, but I have the feeling that that was the Red Ball Express that supported Patton in the Second World War. But think about that. The lowest job they could think of that nobody wanted was to train these guys, not only how to drive truck, but how to be part of a convoy. It's a little different when you're driving with, 50 trucks. You can't just stop, it has to be coordinated. So that was his job. So many times, so many stories about how the African American soldiers were thought of as other, something not to be valued. Today, on this Memorial Day, I hope we can start thinking about how we might be able to change some of that, if only in our thinking. Amen, and blessed be.
We're going to be singing hymn 149, Lift Every Voice and Sing, sometimes known as the Black National Anthem. In World War II, the black soldiers used this song as one of supporting themselves. So it really does best with a piano. And so we're going to do it with me on the screen instead of here so that Margaret can be playing with us because she's away today. Please join in singing hymn number 149, Lift Every Voice and Sing, sometimes known as the Black National Anthem.
Ring with a
As part of our caring outreach to one another, we set aside a few moments to note both sorrows and joys in our lives. In these moments of peace and reflection, we turn our attention to one another. We hold each and all in our compassionate thoughts and the prayers of our hearts. This morning, we are dropping stones in water. The bowl includes some of the water we gathered as a community back in September, so it contains the love of our congregation surrounding each joy or sorrow. As we add the stones to the bowl of water, our experiences are given weight and depth. We add a piece of our own stories to the collective waters of this community, a place that also holds the memories of those who have gone before and anticipates those who have yet to arrive. To share the joy or sorrow you would like held by our caring community, please text the number that is in the chat box and on the sanctuary screens. Please include your name along with your sharing. It is the same number no matter how you join us today, and you can add it to your contacts for future weeks. I will read them aloud, and Ed will drop a stone on your behalf. What is shared today will go out in our weekly caring notes for those who cannot be with us this morning. Please remember to include your name with what you share. And now we will drop a final stone for all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken and deep within our hearts. With words spoken and stones dropped, we honor our joys and our sorrows, those shared this morning and the many more that exist beyond words. Through our time together, our relationships are deepened and our community made whole.
Please rise and join in singing Turn the World Around by Harry Belafonte. He popularized this song from its calypso feeling. We come from the fire, living in the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the fire, living in the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living in the mountain, go back to the mountain, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living in the mountain, go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Whoa, so is life, ah, so is life. Whoa, so is life, ah, so is life. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Whoa, so is life, Abitoire. So is life. Whoa, so is life, Abitoire. So is life. Water make the river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain, spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit, only can the Spirit turn the world around. Whoa, so is life, Abitoire. Ha, so is life. Whoa, so is life, Abitoire. Ha, so is life.
Our chalicing words this morning come from Gary Kowalski. With faith to face our challenges, with love that casts out fear, with hope to trust tomorrow, we accept this day as the gift it is, a reason for rejoicing. May you go with courage, hunger for a curiosity that challenges and changes us, knowing that our answers are never complete and the questions make us whole. Amen, and go in peace.